So I'm going to introduce the next speaker. This is a guy who I met on Facebook as well. He does some amazing work in Sweden. His name is Schott. Now, Kevin is, he's worked with the environment and indigenous First Nations all across the world. He's based in Sweden with partner, children, and applying his knowledge on a test site that he's been working on, I think, for about 10 years, against, as he calls it, all colonial and imperial odds. Kevin continues to look for ways to bring real, sustainable balance back to the earth, with help from the indigenous elders from across the world. So please welcome Kevin Schott.
Well, I have to say I'm extremely nervous here. Anyway, I've never come to London, the belly of the beast, to actually give a talk like this before, but there's a whole lot of talk about Zionism and everything, which I know very little about, because my whole focus in life. But I want to take the wider perspective, because I've been with the victims all my life. I've really spent time on a personal level speaking with the indigenous. On not even an NGO level, it's been family to family, and a lot of cultural sensitivity has been involved along the way. And along that way, it's been helping me map out the life that I need to set up for my kids as well, so that we can all reach a common understanding finally sometime down the road, hopefully soon in the future. But the only ism I would ever speak about and against is colonialism. And I think I can explain that finally after 26 years of listening to elders of all nations, that we all essentially want the same things. We all want peace. We all want a secure community. We all want fresh water. And we're not getting it because there's been a common enemy that's been growing and growing and growing. And I've asked the same question everywhere I've spoken to. What is this enemy? Who is it? It keeps getting made into a race question or a religious question. But it's none of these things, and it's quite simple, really quite simple. We're all one circle, we're all related. We've all got the same story, we've just had different branches, different episodes of the same story. We've been breaking apart and meeting up again, forgetting each other along the way, because large times have gone by where we've lost everything due to the battles of power, the struggle going on around us. And I've had indigenous elders explain it in this way, that all natural life on Earth is one circle. Everything's circular. Everything knows its path. Everything tries to be round. Everything in the universe tries to move in circles and cycles. And the same goes on the microcosm on this level, on Mother Earth, is that we need to work in the round. We need to work in a circle where we can see each other clearly. There's no more paranoia. There's nothing going on behind anyone's backs. We're not talking to the backs of anybody's head in a classroom. We're actually one circle, one family, one people, and we do have a common destiny thanks to colonialism that we've let get out of control. And this has been going on for thousands of years now. And this isn't the first time it's happened. This is apparently, if I'm to believe the Hopi elders, then this is the fourth civilization that the Earth has ever seen, which is about to just wipe itself out in so many different ways. It's unbelievable. But it's all happening in our generation, and we have a responsibility to deal with this, especially those of us with kids and grandkids. So I've personally seen so much on my travels that I've had to put everything I've learned all into use now on a piece of land, because it's all about our relationship to the land and to all our relations that share that land, including the insects, the water itself, the earth itself, the microorganisms, the animals, the birds, the trees themselves, and all the plants. And these are my relatives that I choose to work with now. I don't want to get dragged off into these battles about power struggles for different little pyramids. It's all becoming one pyramid, and it's all one big illusion in our time. I'll give a good example of this. I've heard a lot of talk now related to World War II and what happened there. Well, I'm based in Sweden, and part of my research to respect the local culture before I set up on the land was to research the history, the local history. It didn't exist. And that made me question. So I started asking around medias, and suddenly a program came on the radio about Berlin, the day Berlin fell. And they're just investigating this now. But this is how little we know, all of us. The day Berlin fell, The richest families who were responsible for the worst of everything, they just got out of there across the Baltic Ocean and they got let into Stockholm, quite simply. Without passports, without papers, they got set up.
Wow.
These are the richest people who made it out of Berlin. And Sweden didn't exist. Sweden's been colonized 5 times over since the 500s, 1000s, and then came the French in the 1700s and the Germans in the 1800s. And they started this squabble between academics in Berlin about where the roots of their culture was, and it got out of control. But somebody saw this, and I'm guessing it's something to do with this Zionist talk. I don't know, I can't point fingers. But somebody locally saw this and took full opportunity of it. From 1944 to 1977, Sweden was forcibly lobotomized and sterilized 63,000 women based on sexual activity between races were sterilized up until 1977. It did not stop when Berlin fell. This thing is an entity. It's not any race, it's not any culture, it's not any religious root. It's an entity of opportunism, and it happens in pyramid form. When someone in the circle starts going with the ego, it pyramid forms, it pushes away, it pulls away from the whole family, and they feed it. And to make this higher, to get a higher perspective, to look down on more people, they need followers. They need to put 2 more people under them to lift them up. And the second greed and laziness become the foundations of this pyramid. That person on the top has lost all natural connection to the natural world around them and to their surrounding community. They have no empathy or compassion left. And
those are the key words, empathy.
yes, I believe so. Because like I say, I work even today with the most suffering of our indigenous around the world, especially in Canada right now is the perfect example. Elsie Pogtog Nation, unceded territories, Texas energy company that's used up its land base with fracking equipment and oil equipment. They're now after the Canadian First Nations land. So they've gone in with the RCMP, the Canadian police, all fully armed up with snipers and everything, moving peaceful blockades from their own communities that they've never signed away, and still going strong. The energy company in Texas has now taken out an injunction on the people to get off the road so they can come and smash up their land, pollute their water. And the poor people out there fighting for their lives now, quite simply, like any other indigenous around the world. And it's everywhere you look, from the Belamonte Dam down in South America, to the Lakota in South Dakota stopping the pipeline and the uranium being pulled up from on their lands. It's going on everywhere. And right now, there's a Canadian company trying to get the uranium from under our feet in Sweden, from under our mountain, our plateau mountain. But so I just wanted to say that colonialism is a thing we should be looking at and trying to stop in our generation, because I don't think we've got more than one generation. I'd like to tell you quickly my story anyway, before I get sidetracked, so people understand where I am, where I've come from, and how I got into this, and how it's all relevant towards the end, and the work I'm doing today. I was born in 1974 in the Western Isles of Scotland, anyway, so I'm actually from the Isles, and I want to raise my voice and add my voice to the people speaking on behalf of all land and life here. And I've promised the Indigenous and my own children I will do so. So this was a first opportunity for that. But I was raised by the women of Clan Donald, because there was only really my grandfather in the family, who's a retired Navy man, became a gardener. Never met my father, who gave me the name Schott, so I went with the Donalds all that time. But my grandfather relocated the family to England anyway when I was about 2-year-old, and they were needing to find gardening work all around the country. So in that time I started seeing the industrial mess that had been left in different regions of England, and where it all started, industry and the abuse of the fire. And they eventually settled in.
Explain the fire, you use that word a lot, but these people that won't know.
Yes, this is thanks to Hopi, again, Hopi perspective. I was out with Hopi elders in 2004 on the high plateaus of Arizona, and they say that a guardianship a long time ago maybe made it this far to the north, Northern Europe, Scandinavia. I think it was Scotland and the Orkney Islands, but I'm still checking this out. And we had knowledge from the past worlds, from the past civilizations that had wiped themselves out, and then came the floods, the natural disasters and meteor impacts. But anyway, part of this knowledge went on, and a clan went away to investigate how it could be used for the best of all humanity and all life. Each of the elements had a clan, but the fire clan never came back. And they were supposed to come back once they'd learned everything they could and share equally for the good of all. but they never came back. So since then, thousands of years ago, the Hopi elders have been watching from the cliff tops, still waiting for their true brother to come back with this information. But they said if it didn't come back, then it's a process. It's human behavior that they've got unbroken knowledge of. And eventually we go past certain crossroads where we can choose differently. And all the time the pyramid's growing if we're not acting right, if we're not repairing.
Would you mind holding the microphone slightly closer?
Yes?
Yeah, thank you.
Could I get some water up here as well, please? I'm drying out. Thank you. But yes, this fire, we see it. We see the fire was, we became obsessed with it from the north of Scotland, from the Orkney Islands, down the east coast of England and London, this area. A lot came out of this area. But a lot of ideas were taken from Scotland, a lot of inventions taken by the English people from London, and then turned into inventions and copyrighted. And big businesses started up, and this guardianship of the fire got forgotten a long, long time ago. And greedy people, thank you, greedy people took over with every invention, and the fire eventually became the best weapon as well. And the more enemies we created by being greedy and by being selfish and no empathy for the suffering, the more enemies we've created along the way. It's very simple maths. And we no longer respected the circle. And yeah, we see it flowering in our time. I would say 5,000 years have gone by of this greed going unchecked. And yeah, we see it flowering very much in our time, and one pyramid developing on the earth with all the world's governments involved. I don't support any of these so-called people, these so-called human beings. I see every day what they do, and they have no conscience, and they're not working for my kids. So yeah, I started learning all this when I was moving around England, because I had indigenous people pop up on my path in the middle of England while I was hitchhiking around. People in different environmental organizations brought in as speakers would just happen to be on my path, and at the right time for me to compare notes. And this led on more and more serious throughout my adult life. But when I was 16, I investigated the British Army as well, because I thought that's one of the pyramids being used heavily around the world. And so I joined in 1990 with my friend Carl Higgs there. And straight after, we did 4 weeks of basic training, and a month after that, they said, we're going to war. And I said, you must be joking. And at first they said, yes, we are joking, but then the day after that they said, no, we weren't actually, you are going to war, and we're invading Kuwait. We're backing up the Americans on an invasion there. And there was a lot of speculation, a lot of theories flying around, what's going on here? We have no business there. And I got my answers pretty much in that first few months. It was about oil, because the game plan was the American Apaches were coming in to secure the oil depots of Kuwait in the first 10 minutes of the invasion. But the regiment I was working for the British Army was making better time on the ground in tanks with Union Jacks painted on the roof and everything. And how I remember it, and what made me disgusted from that day onwards, was the Apaches swooped down and bombed the British tanks with 17 and 18-year-old boys in the first few minutes of Kuwait, Desert Storm. And for years, the parents didn't get any compensation from Washington for it. Oh, it was friendly fire, these things happen. But during the time, I remember the rest of the British, horrified, were told, oh, move on to the hospitals and other parts of the infrastructure to secure them. We've got this sorted out, just like we had planned. And I've seen it since then. Every new war, every single thing has been about this fire and building these cities. And what were these cities for? They're for slave workers, pre-calculated numbers to support a higher pyramid. And the higher someone wants an oversight over something, a landscape, you need a wider base for stability. And the only base that's left is the poorest people who have connection to the earth and the things they are forced to do in order to survive in all parts of this world. They're sickening, and I can't stand for it. So I had to find everything from along my path which led to complete sustainability, which would be accepted by the indigenous, which could be in line with the indigenous for the first time ever. We could finally re-meet our brothers and sisters who haven't forgotten anything. And I'm not saying we have to go back to the Stone Age or anything like that, or run around naked, but that was part of our responsibility with the fire. We discovered how to do good things with that too. And if we didn't do it to the extreme, there'd be enough for everybody. One good point of this, which they know, these power people know, is free communications for everybody. and a shared knowledge base around the world for everybody, including the best of all traditions. It wouldn't cost anything to set up now. So I started doing it about 10 years ago. I set technical people I knew on the task. We can replace all world government with one consensus-based system online. There is no need for pyramids anymore. We can talk to each other now. That is one example of how the guardianship of fire, can be used for everyone's best interests. There's never been a more powerful generation on Mother Earth than there is today.
Yes.
Because of the things we have access to.
But we're just not using them properly.
We're not, no.
aware what we've got access to.
And we're letting the warmongers take the lead and wipe out everyone else along the way who's trying to make a resistance. And I've seen who these people are, these people who call themselves warriors in the indigenous nations. These are good people.
Is that the fire?
It's from the heart. It's heart and mind in tune, and in tune with their community. They're listening to their women. The women are saying, our kids are in danger, our water's in danger. The warriors have to be up front, strong hearts to the front. And that's why they're standing there peacefully, blockading the roads. And they're coming in full armed force with snipers and everything from companies from other countries. Local police are defending foreign energy interests. That says to me they're one step away from finally crystallizing this one big pyramid. And it's happening this last 2 years all over the earth. And the Aborigines down in Africa as well, all parts. It seems like there's a full-on invasion of America going on right now, down from North Africa. And I discovered along the way the Swedish government is getting rich off this from genocide in Ethiopia. So when I found that information, I was forced to write a very long letter to the tax system in Sweden. So listen, I don't care, I'm not Swedish anyway. I've never voted for a politician in my life or a pyramid system. I'm not part of this. You can remove me completely from your records. And I name names. Every one of the politicians from the Prime Minister downwards, they've all become filthy rich off this deal in Ethiopia. And these people have burned out the indigenous villages and created 9 new oil districts under the area. And the ex-Swedish Prime Minister rushed down there, and the days they were burning, he was in the offices with their government negotiating for 6 of these 9 new districts, knowing damn well what was going on. So this is the 6th time now in Sweden. I've tried to break myself, decolonize myself from this whole way of doing things officially and not make any secrets about it. I see myself as one of the last warriors to come out of Scotland, quite honestly. We were colonized a long time ago, and because of that, the McDonald's ended up in Canada and America fighting against our brothers and sisters over there, committing atrocities. So I've turned to them and explained all of this. This is part of my personal motivation for trying to repair the damage done and explain what happened, which was during the Highland clearances of the 1800s. My people were placed by English sheep on the highlands, and we were forced to starve on the islands of the Western Isles where I was born. I've always said to the indigenous, I don't know why, but I was born bearing the pain of the generations. There's some unfinished business here that I cannot escape. It's twisted up with my fate. And it's affected my family life and everything along the way. When the army finally kicked me out, when they asked too many questions, I went through a year of getting put in jail and beaten up by the Marines and 6 weeks guard duty. Then finally they kicked me out. I went straight up in the treetops and started defending the last of the forests in England against the road building and against the pyramids, basically, against industry. And I ended up in the Newbury bypass protest. I was happy to see someone from Newbury here today because I was up in the trees in '96. And I was brought into London as a terrorist, thanks for that. They banned me from the whole south of England in '96, officially listed as one down from the IRA as a terrorist for this country. Meanwhile, veterans from World War II were giving up their medals to us up in the trees, saying, we understand now, you guys are fighting for this country. So I know I was no terrorist. And it was peaceful, it was all peaceful. We've never pulled arms on anyone, never put anyone's lives in danger. It's all been a little bit of sabotage, a little bit of tree planting and garden planting, where they've cut down and burnt off. But we held the forest for a couple of years, and in the end they sent the anti-terrorist police in. So here I am today, a little bit nervous about who's in the room, but hi. I'm still at it anyway, but that same year that I was banned from the south of England, I got news that I had a child in Sweden coming. So while the police were knocking on doors in 4 counties looking for where I disappeared, I'd actually got a one-way flight to Sweden. And there I am today, waited for the first child, set up an environmental organisation, and thought, no, got to keep going. And as soon as I thought that, I got a big letter from a friend from the forest in England with earthships, pictures of earthships. And from my earliest memories from 12-year-old that forced me to leave home and live in the forest because of these recurring dreams about earthship-like things, there they were finally in '98. I had all the information in front of me, so I ran with this. I ran to a study agency in Sweden. I said, look at this. This is both the weapon and the tool against colonialism without creating any more enemies. We choose to do it as a basic human right. We can sustain ourselves from our own lands. We can sustain our neighbours. We can cooperate. None of these things you need to ask for. If you already access that land peacefully and everyone's fine with that, then there is no pyramid on this earth that you need to ask permission to survive from. Yes?
I've lived in woods in Wales for 2 months, and I tried to secure land and things like that, and it was just impossible. It was literally impossible. I tried for 5 years, you know, and then basically I just given up on the dream and came back and started helping people in another way that I'm doing now.
Okay.
But how do we get around it? It just seems to be impossible now unless you've got loads of money.
Yeah, what I was wanting to say before is I see my work as the last personal, peaceful solution on earth, is the last line in the sand. To go beyond this or to ignore this, we're going to get into violent conflict with our governments and everything. So I'm trying to deal with that issue. We need land access, and we need it pretty badly because these cities are non-sustainable.
I think the aim is to buy up land bases and then basically devalue it.
Yeah, I want to.
And so that like Kevin set up several sort of different economic groups, and the idea is that we buy the land, bring it underneath that circle, so it doesn't actually belong to anybody. And then anybody that's within the circle has access to use that land as need be.
It's responsibility.
I think it is basically cooperation all the way.
Yeah.
You know, people get together, they buy the land has to take the value off the land, it's not worth anything to anybody except those that live in it.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where Kev's going with it.
And because the nature of building earthships, it doesn't matter if you've got a wrecked piece of land. If you've got hold of a cheap piece of land that was an old quarry or anything like that everyone else thinks is worthless, it's worth way more than that. With building earthships and things, we can bring life back there. We can regreen the desert. We can do everything that's needed. But we need these troublemakers out of the way. This is the only thing in our way is these pyramids and their laws and their forceful.
Is this similar to the concept of White Way? Are you familiar with White Way? It was an anarchist colony in the Cotswolds.
I've not heard of that one.
100 and something years ago. My wife had an aunt who lived there and cousins who live there still. And they bought up the land and then destroyed.
Can you stand up, please, so that people can hear you?
Sorry. The colony of White Way in the Cotswolds, 100 or so years ago, was set up on a similar principle. They bought up the land and then burnt the deeds so that it belonged to no one. And it sounds a rather similar situation. I was just wondering if you were familiar with it.
I'm a bit ignorant to that particular case,
Yeah.
but it sounds very in line with where I've been feeling it needs to go and what the Indigenous have said as well we need to go.
Kevin, could you just explain earthship? I think a lot of people might not understand what earthship is.
Okay, this is me in work for the last 7 years by hand with no machines on our land. An earthship, they came about as I know it in 60s in the deserts of New Mexico. But yes, Taos, New Mexico. Where did that come from? There, hey! But yeah, an architect named Michael Reynolds, he realized already there was an issue with the waste problem being thrown around even in the desert with tires and cans and jars and bottles. And he started playing around for a few years, and one thing led to another over a longer time, and he realized he could build completely sustainable habitat with these materials and lock them up safely so they don't degrade into the environment. And these buildings would be self-heating. They catch their own water for a family through the roof. You can actually calculate the size you need to water a whole family year-round. It will capture the grey water after human use and run through a food-producing jungle system indoors, which is a place that we intend to harbour our parent plants against GM cross-pollination in the future as well. We want like a Noah's Ark inside our building. And so far I'm a caretaker of 150 species of food and medicine, of the natural kind. And yeah, what Carl's just shown here is it's the last 7 years there's been pictures being taken of different stages of the build. But the whole bearing structure, for a start, is built with car tyres pounded with earth with a sledgehammer. And they're so heavy you can't lift them afterwards. They don't need a concrete foundation. They float. The whole building floats on the earth and can move with it. The buildings today in these cancerous societies, they're built with these huge foundations that eventually crack anyway to withstand the earth's movements. But these are built in U-form. When they're all locked together with the roof structure, then they will move safely. They stand against earthquakes and hurricanes. They're built in all climates on Earth now, and they work. They can be adapted for all climates on Earth. And we're at the forefront of the Nordic research. But now the inventor himself is starting his own projects in the north of Sweden, so I'm looking forward to that. But
yeah, I just want to say, you're talking about the Hopi Indians and their
yes.
religion.
Yes.
Well, you see, if you go back, that was Christ's teachings would have been like that. What has happened to religion is that they become materialized and petrified. They become, yeah?
Yeah, dogmatic. A lot of,
yeah?
yes, yes.
So that's a problem with religion. We've got to go back to basics, and so it's organized religion that's the problem.
Yes.
Like the Muslims have got the Hadith, that's man-made laws. The Catholics have got the canonical law, and the Jews have got the Talmud.
Yeah.
But it's not based on the Old Testament exactly, or the New Testament, or the Quran. You see, it's really. And then the point about pyramids and that,
yes.
and colonialism. By the British Empire, we were mercenaries for the Rothschilds for the banking system, and now we're mercenaries for the New World Order. You see, we're all victims.
Yes,
And the ordinary British people didn't get anything out of the British Empire, lived in poverty, slums.
The thing is, we've been
We're all victims, and the Welsh, everybody, right?
and the scary bit is, every single person living in a city has lost their connection to Mother Earth. There's no daily relationship anymore, except over abuse of all the elements that come into our lives. How the water is used through our taps and waste systems, to how much fire is in every product we buy, in every bit of packaging, every bit of transport. It's all oil every second of the journey, constantly, 24 hours a day.
Is there some call to action that you can tell us, everyone, that we can do, little things we can do that can make a big difference?
You've just brought me personally to that point, because Tahra here has just saved my land, my family land in Sweden, from the bailiffs claiming it, because we've been trying to break free of the, from the whole family. This was the sixth and final attempt on our own to break out of the system so we don't have to send tax declarations every year. But this time they got sick of me and fined me straight away, sent it to the bailiffs, and the bailiffs gave us 2 weeks to find a ridiculous amount of money, otherwise they were taking the land. We don't own anything else. And Tahra stepped up before the event and she saved our bacon completely. So I actually go home, back to my work, and continue to finish this off after this.
It's a loan, it's not
and it's definitely not forgotten. But that's an amazing thing. But what was the next step of my work? I prepared for 10 years ago. I thought we would come to this. I thought as one family we couldn't completely break out on our own. But what we can do is we can start a land fund. We know all of the bits and pieces we need to be building for each other and with each other.
So you mentioned you've got land bases across the world, or?
Since I've been putting the idea out, people from different countries have been coming to me before I've even organised the structure. And they said, oh, we've got land, or we're buying land, or we want to give you land. And the Makudu indigenous people in South Africa have given us 8 hectares of land to do an allied project there to decolonize South Africa. But then, sorry?
Cyprus.
Yeah, and Cyprus.
Malawi that's just been built, isn't it? Schott?
I think so, yeah. I'm not too up to date with Michael Reynolds' team or anything. We work independently.
So is there something that we could get involved with somehow, or in these airships?
Yes, well, for one, our land will be open all next year. From May till October is the best weather, but people are very, very welcome to just turn up and camp up. We've got 2.5 hectares there of land and forest around it. We've got moose and deer in every morning, just eating peacefully. And they don't even get disturbed by me being there working anymore. They realise we're friends, I think. So first of all, the site is open, so there's a training opportunity. We have more of the building to build. I think we can win the legal battle over the next 2 months as well about the build, because it was classed as illegal in the beginning. It was classed as the biggest illegal build ever for the region. They spotted it by aircraft and started taking photographs. I thought it was CIA. I was stood on the roof with my fingers up with it. It wasn't, it was the local authorities. Had a bit of explaining to do. But it looks like it's going to keep going anyway. And around that is a 4-zone permaculture system planned for the area. My whole family will eat from the smallest footprint in human history. The UN say today that one adult Swedish adult, he needs 6 hectares anywhere on earth, usually in the third world, to supply them for food, for energy, and to take care of their waste. And right now, the indigenous are in care of the last 25% of the earth, landmass that is still untouched. They're defending it with their lives, and with that, they're defending 80% of all species that we have left on those lands. So if we could join them, if we could reclaim a big enough land base without creating an enemy, just sidestep the enemy for now, and set up bigger and bigger land bases. I have an organisation that's set up to do this.
Can you give us the name, please?
Medicine Ways Ekonomisk Förening, the Swedish, the last bit, but it just means cooperative.
So can you just repeat that again?
Medicine Ways.
Medicine
Ways.
Ways.
Because I use that in the indigenous sense of the word of medicine. We're looking for everything that can help us reset the balance and reconnect us as family. My job, I see, being born in the north, and fate has landed me even further north, it seems like we have the biggest struggle ahead of us in human history of trying to make the north sustainable. It's been too easy for us to rob and steal and set up trade because we have all our excuses for this. But
and are there other things that people can do if they don't get involved with this project? Little things that we can do to help sustainability, sustainable living.
Yes, but it all starts with the land. Effectively, without addressing the land issue, you don't have anything to stand on in the beginning to repair your relationship to.
Could you also not look at, I'm not sure if you know of Luby McNamara. She's written a book talking about people and permaculture, which talks about integrating permaculture principles within everyday life through meetings, pretty much everything you can do, and using those same principles to become more sustainable.
Okay, I agree to a certain scale of things. We could slam the brakes on even from within the cities, because we have a lot of good examples in America, especially where people are rooftop gardening, they're putting permaculture on their balconies and getting amazing results. But the more of these things and the more public food forests that can be set up within a city, the more buildings that are absolutely cancerous that could go, really, don't destroy them, take them apart piece by piece, put them materials to one side, because life has been lost at one point for those materials. So we don't want to just smash them up, we want to reuse every single thing we can break off the old to rebuild the new with, and without doing it in conflict, without creating enemies. So when I call it the last peaceful line that we have to try not to cross, it involves money then because of that. If you want to reclaim a piece of land peacefully, we've seen how it's gone for the indigenous. It's not going to happen by asking kindly. So we know that that's out off the table. But with money, while money is still in circulation, I've avoided it. I've lived without it for 10 years. And now it's come to that point, I needed to finish the roof of the building. And I needed to set this fund going. Because in a few years from now, I see the whole world's police force arming itself up like military as we speak. I see millions of my friends, my brothers and sisters, shouting for revolution in every country on earth. And I've been hearing it all my life from the indigenous. They've been begging us to wake up to this and trying to help us humbly all along at the same time to understand where we've gone wrong. So we're heading into very worrying times, and it will be lockdown. It's lockdown already in America in some places. There's things going on that shouldn't be going on, and it reminds people of 1930s Berlin. It really is at that point now, so we don't have much time. Before all the censorship started in the 90s, I read the report from the World Watch Institute, which said we had only one generation left to save the ecosystems. We only had these people who are alive today. Our kids aren't going to be growing up in time to do their part. And the old ones are obviously so corrupt, they have their own ideas, and possibly even on depopulation of the earth, from what I've seen. there's some horrifying things. The guy who wrote the book Eco-Science in the 70s about depopulating the Earth, about reducing it to 50 million people, he's actually President Obama's chief science advisor today, in charge of geoengineering. And we wonder where chemtrails and everything come into it. The same month chemtrails started over us in Sweden, the Swedish government decided to burn the whole population's gas masks for the country that we've had since the Second World War. Every single person had a brand new gas mask in a box.
Oh, well, that's just a coincidence.
Yeah, it got a little mention in the newspaper, oh, we don't see the same threat anymore from the air, like we did in the 70s. So we've incinerated millions of brand new, unused gas masks. That makes me worried, because I was one of the first to see chemtrails over Sweden in 2010. I'd already worked for 10 years under an open sky, nothing. I was in the military alongside air technicians. Still haven't seen anything like it. And then suddenly, October the 17th, 2010, there came 7 aircraft at once and a perfect chessboard pattern over my head when I was digging in the field. I said, this is something. And since then, I've seen it growing in the world, and more people are reporting, and I'm getting a bit nervous about that one, because overnight they could change whatever they're spraying to something deadly.
Have you seen a shift in people's interest in what you're doing, being more connected to the earth as well?
Yes, unfortunately, a lot of my time's gone to running to the assistance of the indigenous now under fresh attacks from energy companies. So my contact with my own friends and people have been lost a bit, and even my family is saying it's getting harder for us to relate. So that's a bit of a problem. But when I settle down and focus on my work on the land, I realize we've had 200 visitors this last year, and we haven't gone out public or anything.
Wow.
From 30 countries, people have just turned up, and they've given us a hand or bought a couple of planks or a box of nails and tried to support.
You mentioned chemtrails. Have you any suggestions how to filter out the pollutants in the air?
That's a tricky one, but I'm definitely keeping a careful eye on it. Once we've got the roof finished on our ship, then I'm going straight into serious water filtering and air filtering techniques to try and learn these things as fast as possible.
What about using things like fungi?
Just getting into that as well. For radiation and things like that, I've just heard that fungi can be an amazing thing. But what we learned in the army was our nuclear, biological and chemical suits were lined with charcoal. And charcoal is something you can do at home. If you can take storm damaged trees and cut the roots and burn them to make the charcoal, you even get a byproduct for roofing tar to make waterproof roofs. So you can filter water through charcoal. It's a very slow process, but I believe you can even remove radiation from water during that process as well.
I think the key thing is whatever you use or you produce, you make sure you get something else from it as well. So for every reaction, you get a reaction and another reaction if you can. For example, with the way Kevin's doing things is the water in his house gets used 5 times before it goes out.
Yeah, when that building is complete.
It's basically about optimising whatever you've got and
Interdependent
getting the most out of it. For sure.
And by the time the water's released back to the garden outside the building, it will be cleaner than EU standards even as well. Yes.
Kevin, is there any possibility that this destruction that's going on is part of our evolution and we're ready to move on to something else?
I think a lot of this has got to go. The Hopi call it again. They've seen it for a long, long time, and they call it the purification time that's coming. There's a word that precedes that, which they call Koyanis Kwatsi, and if you translate that, it means a world gone crazy, a world out of balance, a world demanding another way. And when I heard that, I got goosebumps, because my whole life since my early visions was just about that path. And I knew it had to be linked, and a strange set of coincidences got me out to Arizona in 2004. I wasn't even going there.
So that's really beautiful, actually. We're out of time. If you can finish on that lovely, beautiful note. So
Yes.
what were you looking forward to?
What was I looking forward to?
So you said that we're in a crazy world, out of balance, and that we're looking at the world of purification.
Yes,
Amazing.
I don't see it as a negative thing, but they say there's going to be hardships, they say there will be war, and the Hopi that are alive today, they even say they're here now, they're in our country, they're waiting to start a war to kill people without reason. There's going to be a massive amount of loss of life, and they say there will even be something that covers the skies from the west, possibly, like an army of red ants on the last days of purification. So I've got my eye on North Korea and on China and on Japan, could be Fukushima. Everything's happening in our generation, so I think this is purification time. And I'm not a religious guy, I'm just a respectful, honest guy. I take everything on board and I filter the information the best I can. So I think, I asked the Hopi elders, I'll end on that note then. Before we left for our plane from Hotevilla traditional village up in the mesas, 3,000 meters above sea level in the dry desert there, I asked, what can we do for you guys? I feel it's so strong, we need to assist you. How is the best way we can help? We've just supported the oil company getting here all this way to do on-land support, so that's not sustainable. I said, what is your instruction that we can do? And he just laughed at me and he said, go home now, because you are one of the last caretakers of the North. And after this time is through, there may only be a handful of us left in each continent on Earth. It could get so out of balance, could spiral so out of control. And he said, the things you're working on, just go home and do that. And he said, if you don't believe me, here's some signposts for you. When you get home to the North, you will see and hear about the biggest earthquake humankind has ever witnessed. And then he said, straight after that, even in the North, in Scandinavia, you will witness the biggest storms you've ever seen. And I was like, well, that's easy enough to see. Okay, we'll go home and wait for that. But anyway, got home, and exactly 5 weeks after we'd landed home in Sweden, it was all over the newspapers, the Indonesian earthquake and the tsunamis in all directions, all coasts, all peoples. And I thought, well, that's a big one. That's the biggest earthquake I've ever heard of, ever, in human history. And exactly 5 weeks after that, a big storm came to Sweden, and it leveled the forest like matchsticks. And they were flying over in disbelief with helicopters, filming it, and they were lying down like matchsticks, all the trees. And Sweden's 66% forest still. And all the south part of the country, those people committing suicide because that was their living. They were foresters, they were taking care of the trees. And they lost a lot with that storm. But it was exactly as we were told before we left Hopi land. And that really made me start paying attention more. I think these guys are pure in some way. They really have their hearts in this, and they know what they're talking about. And they say they're connected with the Tibetan monks. They're close brothers to them. They have same words for different prophecies and things, which I can't understand, and it's not my place to intrude either. I just take what's willingly, freely given.
It's really interesting, the guy Michael, who started the earthpod thing,
Yes.
actually went to, after the earthquake in the Philippines, and started building these things.
Yes, I noticed that as well. I was blown away. He turned up on the Andaman Islands with his crew and started building for the indigenous after everything had been washed away. Yes.
So I'm slightly confused because on one end I'm hearing you saying that the Hopi people are saying that there's going to be war when they're going to war, and on the other hand I'm hearing you saying that, you know, they're true of heart and they believe in their visions and they believe in who they are.
Yes.
And my understanding of what Tibetan Buddhism, because I know a lot about that, is that we create our own reality. So what we think and what we feel is then what aspires. So if I'm sitting here thinking we're going to war, then that doesn't make me feel very good and my energy level's lower. But if I'm sitting here in my trueness of my heart and I'm feeling that the earth is a beautiful place worth keeping, then my energy raises and there's solutions and there's things that I can do. So I'm a bit confused because I hear you saying two things that contradict each other.
This is mainly because I'm an inexperienced speaker and I am under no authority from any traditional elder to be saying the things I'm saying today. And probably some of the things I've been told as things in that situation I've been able to take on board, but not necessarily maybe go around doing speeches like this about. It's just part of it. One of the instructions of the Iroquois in the East Coast in particular is never to take hope from the people. That was one of their instructions for peace. And this is where I agree, I'm probably going wrong by putting too much emphasis on these things. It was just because I do these speeches from the heart, and it sometimes gets a bit jumbled up and lose a bit of focus to who I'm speaking to. I just let all of the information out. So, but yeah, I'm saying the work I'm involved in, all of those elements, there's every hope to cling on to that. And if a person chose 100% to work with these things, they wouldn't have to think about war and things like that unless it was on their doorstep. And then everyone has the right to defend their family. But as long as you know 100% you're working for the earth and for all of the other species, and we're losing 200 species a day now, we're into a mass extinction event here. So we're trying to save pockets of life. There is a lot of depression, there is a lot of negative things to deal with. And me myself has been burned out a few periods in the last few years. But it's just to gather hard again and keep focusing in on the practical, positive relationships we can repair.
Yeah, so you've got to stay positive, otherwise it's
Yeah, oh yes, definitely. I understand that. You should ask my partner at home. I'm not the most shiny person at home when I'm trying to deal with all of the new information every day. And I use Facebook a lot more than other people on earth as well. I did an analysis which showed I use it like 98% more than anyone else. But it's only to support the indigenous, and it's always negative news for the most part. So I have to find a process of dealing with that myself. But the actual work on the ground and every step that goes forward, even if it goes on pause for a while and then continues later, that is all good. That is all 100% positive. And if I didn't have that, I don't know, I probably would be burning things down. The things I've seen and the pains I've seen people go through and lose their children, and it's just unforgivable. But I don't know how, but until this point, I'm not a terrorist or anything like that. I wouldn't dream of it. I really want to work for one circle still.